Revaluations.
Is it in the same one?
I think it's the
There's
same
one there is one memo from the finance
Stays right there.
Why is this
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, I did, I haven't read it yet.
You'll see. We've been discussing this.
Not on.
One of the library ones, I think. Library.
No, just the email.
Okay, you okay with that? So I think we'll call the meeting to order. Tonight's select board meeting, and the second item on the agenda are public comments for items not on the agenda, and that would be for discussion, but not any action tonight. Does anybody from the public have comments or questions for the board? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to the next topic, which is town reports, and we're gonna, Vika's not feeling well, and I think if she needs to do an abbreviated report, we all understand, because most of it's in writing in her town administrative report. So, go ahead.
All right, good evening, everybody. So a few things on the TA report worth mentioning. As always, we do still have planning board and board of appeals members that are needed. If anybody that's interested or knows anybody, please let us know. Parking workshop took place on August 9th. It was really well attended. In this particular packet, there was the summary that was provided from GPCOG. My recommendation to the board would be to, what I have some additional suggestions to kind of improve to the parking and traffic ordinance, so in the future meeting to have that discussion and maybe incorporate some of the other comments that had been made. Cousins Island Bridge improvement, this is something that I brought to the board a couple of weeks ago. In their initial flyer, it looked like they had extended the period for comments, but the deadline is the 5th. There is some pretty extensive work that is looking to happen starting in fiscal year in 2028. They haven't decided what that work would be, but it could be as extensive as entirely replacing the Cousins Island Bridge, which would have very significant impact to Shebig. And so I do think with that, now that that information is out there, it might be really helpful to have a some kind of a comment on the behalf of the town, just reminding DOT, because you don't know who's going to be working on this project, that that bridge is a lifeline for an entire town. And obviously, members of the community should, if they feel so entitled, to provide comments relative to that particular project. This QR code will bring you to that information. It's also on our website as far as the PowerPoint that really goes through what the anticipated possible scope of work would be to that particular bridge. The comments are due by the 5th of September, so if anybody has any comments, that deadline is quickly approaching. And I guess my question to the select board is, does the select board feel that they should have a comment on the behalf of the town, or do you want to kind of leave it to individual members to put comments in?
What's the feeling? David?
The only comment that I can make is to make sure that they understand that people heading for the boat need to get through at boat time. And I don't know how.
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know if you looked at the PowerPoint, but I don't think that's I think what people are gonna have to do is really be, because this could take 3 to 5 years. So in 2028, for 3 to 5 years, Shebig community could be significantly impacted by the work. And I don't know that they would have the capacity to accommodate that.
Last time we did
but
this,
those
though,
are the comments that would be
they were
helpful.
aware of that, and they knew that
Yeah,
at 10 o'clock and noon and so forth, that there'd be a lot of pressure and that people would miss the boat if they were not.
I would think so too, that it would be important for the board to let them know that it's a crucial time. And out of all that, I like their proposal where they're gonna build a second bridge, because that'll impact closures the least over that 2 to 3 year period. And so just from that, it's gonna cost a fortune, but it's gonna cost some, it's gonna cost a lot more to build a second new bridge, but it will impact the island less, I think, from what I can see from their proposal. But anyway, the idea of making the boat is gonna be good that we promote that to them, otherwise it won't.
I guess I think if I would support a letter on behalf of the select board expressing concerns, because if those concerns come true, which may be likely, then we have it on file that we let them know ahead of time and planning. So when it comes to asking for anything different during vote time, I don't even know if that's possible to be arranged, but it really makes the point and it gets it on file.
I'm in agreement, pretty much.
It sounds like it's a consensus that the town, the select board would like to make a comment on behalf of the town. I would say, I think we should, certainly the ferry schedule is worth considering, but there are other people who access Cousins Island, from Shabig, that aren't necessarily on the ferry, so, I think we have to kind of just say that it's the single access way back to Cousins and the Cousins Island Wharf Facility. I think it could be short and sweet and just say,
okay. I can put something in writing and then share it with you to make sure you approve if it's gonna go out on the behalf of the town.
I'm sorry, is there a provision if there's a rescue to be able to get through quickly?
I don't know,
I mean,
That should be definitely indicated. That's true for Cousins too.
right.
you look at some of the construction that you go through in Yarmouth now,
Oh,
so.
But that could be a long wait.
Boat time, single access point, and rescue are the three main points that I heard. Okay. All right, Hook Road and Jenks Road Parkman improvement. It seems like every time we get closer to some progress, there's some minor step back. So we've recently learned, once GI started the process of filling out applications, that these potential projects do need to go to Board of Adjustment Appeals. So where things stand is GEI is going to be drafting the applications to Board of Adjustment Appeals. It's still in talking to the code enforcement officer. At this point, seems like Board of Adjustment Appeals is where both of these will go and could get the approval. One of them may need to go to the planning board after the fact, but I think that will be better answered when we know what the application looks like from GEI. And so when I have more information on that, I will share that with you. In the meantime, for folks who are potentially impacted by these particular projects, this would still require all the same notices that they would have had they gone to the planning board. So all the abutters would still be notified when the time comes the same exact way. Emerald Ash, so we did secure a state representative from the state of Maine Forest Services to come out on September 9th. He is going to be on the island. He's going to spend some time with the municipality. But then from 12:15 until 1:30, we are going to make it available for him to be here for the general public. So if there are any residents, if there is any contractors, if there is any forest services, anybody that has any questions or would like to seek resources of any information relative to emerald ash borer, then, please come and ask question. The gentleman's name is Michael Parisio. He's also going to bring a colleague with him who is going to have information and resources in terms of treatment options. So if there are individual residents who have ash trees who aren't diseased or who are in the early stages, there are treatment options that people can resort to. So we do have it advertised on the website. Leading up to it, we'll do a text alert so people can be more aware of it and reminded of it, but that's definitely something that would be helpful for people who have ash trees on their properties. So that's that. Select Board retreat, so it had been originally scheduled for October 3rd. There is a conflict with at least one board member who's not going to be able to in attendance for that. So I've reached out to GP Cog. Christina is the executive director who is going to be facilitating that, which was really consensus of the board that they wanted to continue with that this year. She had limited availability in the fall, but October 17th was another date that was available to her. And so if the 3rd doesn't work and the 17th doesn't work for a board, then I think we will have to request some availability from her looking into November, if not later. So if the board it looks like some of the faces that I'm seeing, 17th isn't going to be a good date for people either. So if that's the case, I can reach out to her, but she had very specific availability dates through October that she gave us, which were really only 3 or 4 dates. And so I can reach out and see what her availability is to see if this is something that at this point could be done before Thanksgiving.
I can make the 17th work, I just change some other appointments.
So what I would like people to do is, and I think maybe Vika can send out an email, but I think if we shoot for Friday and make sure what Fridays everybody's available going forward, I guess in November, because, or maybe do a doodle poll, I don't know, something. Because I kind of don't want to go back and forth a million times, so maybe we can get a date that we are all available and hopefully, or a couple dates, and then see what Christina's availability is. I'd rather not go much later than November on the retreat, but I do think it's important that everybody attend, so.
All right, I'll reach out with her
Yep.
tomorrow. Brush pile. So Jeff and I have been in contact about the brush pile and trying to figure out what the steps are. The previous company that had done it, there wasn't a contract, and with the way things stood last time, I think it's questionable whether they would come out and do it. Jeff was in contact with Anderson Landscaping, and we received a quote, and it's still really the same thing that we had done in the past, where it was just chipping the product and leaving it there, which doesn't solve a lot of the big problems that we have. The cost was more than what the previous company was. So at this point, it's not a recommendation that I would feel comfortable bringing forth to you, because it wouldn't put us in a better position where we are. And since putting this packet together, I did have somebody approach me with some concerns about that company. And so at this point, I think we have a little bit more research to do to try to determine what and how the brush pile could be handled. But when, and I have that information, I'll bring it to you or share it with Carol and make decisions as far as how to best to approach the board on it. Local health officer, I've had 2 people interested. I had one interview last week with somebody that is a really good candidate. I'm just waiting to hear on a couple of references. And so at this point, I'm hoping that at the next select board meeting, I will ask for an appointment from you for a local health officer. So, those are the things that were on the packet. There are just a couple other things that kind of happened between now and then, since I wrote this. The Island Institute Fellow does start with us on Friday. She's at training this week. She'll come in into Friday and meet the staff, and starting on Monday, she will be with us full-time for the next 2 years. I do have some training that I'm involved with next week to give me a better idea of how to oversee that whole entire process. And on Friday, we'll kind of meet and greet, and then have a better plan as far as what the steps are going to be in terms of what she's going to kick off with when she gets started with us. Mark Roy is the consultant that the town hired to assist post all of the audit transition of not having an auditor. And he has had access to our system. He had found some discrepancies in there from 2022 that were impacting our books, not the physical money, but just the TRIO aspect of things. Andrew and I have been in contact with him a little bit. There is a ticket out through the TRIO, which is the program that we use to try to resolve that stuff, and at this point, it hasn't been resolved, but even with the little bit that he's been able to do, Andrew and I are pretty confident that we'll be able to get some good reassurance from him and good assistance with him that's going to put us in a better position where we've been. So, and then the other thing is there was an email that was received, that I received, that Carol is familiar, I think, with this as well. And what it is it's Casco Bay Island Resiliency Collective. There is going to be on September 16th, there is going to be a trip out to Little Diamond, is that right? I don't have the information. And so I can forward you the email, but what it is it's asking up to 68 participants from the community to attend. And we need to RSVP, and we need to let them know how many people are in attending. It is something that I am interested in going. They are going to have FBE there as well. And I don't know if you want to elaborate any more on that, Carol.
Well, a group of community members, from maybe the community association, constructed a shorefront stabilization project near the boat landing, ferry landing on Little Diamond, and it was constructed last year, and it looks pretty good this year. So that's really, it's to introduce people to some alternative methods for stabilizing the shoreline with vegetation. And it's a combination, it's sort of a hybrid, 4-log vegetation and I think a little bit of toe stone. So it's kind of a good project. It was a community initiative. It was $140,000, which in the world of shorefront stabilization is pretty cheap. And it was constructed mostly by the community with some help from a couple contractors. So it's kind of a neat project in that it was a community initiated project. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to go. Is that a Friday?
It is on Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. So if there are select board members that are interested, let me know, because it's 6 to 8 participants. And when I RSVP, I do need to let them know how many people that they're expecting from our community.
I think Ellie is going, and there are a couple of community members who may be interested, but town, board and staff has the first dibs.
Yep. And I did let them know that I was going to be bringing this to you tonight, and that I would RSVP in the next couple of days.
Yeah,
So.
I would ask that people let people know by tomorrow end of day whether they're interested. Ellie has a couple of people that are interested in going. Okay. And just, Vika, where do we stand with the audit? Did Mark or you tell them to close out the 2024 audit?
I did, and I asked them for an update, like an updated draft. And they provide me with some of the updated information, but not all of it. And so I followed up with an email asking for that. And then I have not heard back. So it's been, I think, about a week and a half, so I can follow up just to try to see if we can get that closed out.
And at some point, we can follow up with a meeting with them. That's still on the table.
Yep.
But it's not urgent right now. And anything, so that's the end of the town administrator report. There were several committee reports, and rather than make Vika kind of summarize them, I think one thing that was in here too was the summary of the meeting, you know, the parking meeting. And so there's quite a bit of information there, and as Vika said, she's gonna add some things, but that's a pretty good summary of kind of what the community input was on that. And then we just, it looks like as we just sat down, we also received a report from the code enforcement officer. So, does anybody have any questions or anything they want to discuss relative to really the departmental or committee reports?
Just a question,
Yep.
what's a growth permit you mentioned in the building inspector?
So we have had some questions from some community members about it. So we have a limited number of growth permits that this was implemented, I think, when we were still part of the town of Cumberland, and I believe it's 4 per year.
That's new construction, basically, new homes.
New homes.
Yep.
And so there had been some questions about how many permits we have issued this year and how many are left, and is there a waiting list? So that's what he's providing information on. And then we do have a report from Coastal Waters, but I think we'll take that up when on the agenda item, and then same with the fire department and the finance committee. I think all of those are agenda items, so we'll hold off on those. And the other one though was, and I don't see it in my packet, but we did have a report from the harbor master finally.
Correct.
Any questions for Vika or folks that are here about those reports? All right. So I think then we should just move on to regular business, and we should organize this so that the people who are sitting here in the audience can speak about these topics. I don't have to sit through the rest of the mundane things. So first on the regular business is 2563, and that's to discuss the communication received from Doug Ross recommending the town consider purchasing a municipally owned boat and to determine the next steps, if any. And Doug had sent the board an email sort of with a justification of why he feels it's a good time to consider purchasing a boat. And so I just wanted to give Doug an opportunity to speak, if you want, about your proposal.
I have really nothing to say other than
Well, for the public who didn't have the opportunity to receive your email, could you just quickly, and I guess we need you to step up so we can hear you, but for the rest of the people who didn't get the email, maybe you could just summarize what it is.
yeah, I'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
Hang on just a minute.
I can give you a copy here.
Thank you. So basically, I think my reasons are we have become to sort of the realization that we're in need out on the water, not just on the island itself, and we have a lot of acreage on the water as well as on the island itself, and we've been called probably a handful of times to assist out on the water. Now, with a boat, which we do not have, we've been at the mercy of the boatyard, and they've been gracious enough to lend their boat as long as one of their employees are present, and Ralph happens to be one of their employees, so it's worked out for us for certain instances. I think, you know, going forward, I didn't get together with Gennaro on his report, but I had to look at it. And there's several instances where he also needed a boat to check out different things from calls from the Coast Guard. And we just don't have it. And I think the time has come. And 5 years ago, I wasn't real happy about this because we lacked personnel. I'm not sure that that's changed a lot, but we have a few more now than we did 5 years ago. We're more capable personnel. And I think it's just the time, and we gotta quit fooling ourselves that we're isolated here and we don't need a boat. We geographically sort of set right in the middle of Casco Bay. It's a busy bay. It's a busy bay in the summer, and the need is out there for our assistance, whether it be into another town's waters or staying in our own town. I think we own all the way out to Brown Cow, correct? Yeah, yeah.
England.
And inward this way, so we own a lot of acreage of water. You know, it all comes down to me sitting here and telling you my ideas, which for right now, they may differ from everybody else's ideas, but I think, and it's all a money item. It doesn't come free, but if we're gonna continue to provide emergency services and help when we can, helping lives, saving property, I think the time has come that we need this upgrade and we need this opportunity for it.
Okay, before you leave the stage here, does the board have any questions for Doug?
So I wanted to know how many calls and what is the nature of the calls that have been made. I don't have any background in when did we no longer have a boat available, and what was the amount of use back then, and if there is a boat still available, what's the condition? So it seems to me a lot of questions need to be answered, but certainly I am aware of the number of calls that have increased this year. And so it seems to me there's a lot of homework that needs to be done to get this
Exactly.
ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Ralph, you
I
can step
can
up.
answer some of that.
Yeah, why don't you come up and answer that? Thanks, Doug. And Doug, I just have one clarifying question, because this came from you sort of personally, is it?
Yes,
Is
it did. If you notice at this time, Lieutenant Chavigan Fire and
Right.
Rescue, it came from me personally.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So as far as a boat goes, I don't know anything that the town has that's seaworthy or even close to even reusable. We've had back when we were part of Cumberland, we had a harbor master boat, and we was kind of utilized that at times. But the only boat that we have now to utilize is the Schwig Boatyard's boat. And I'd say we probably had 6 or 7 calls this year, roughly on the water. And they vary from responding to Long Island. We haven't had any calls to Hope Island this year, but we do collect taxes from Hope Island and other islands, and kind of seems like, I agree with Doug, it's kind of our responsibility as a town to provide those medical services. And it's no different than when we were part of Cumberland. And people got upset when people from Cumberland said, well, they choose to live out there, that's their problem. Well, the shoe's on the other foot now. They choose to live on Hope Island, and it is our problem. We need to be able to get out there. Long Island's been great over the years, responding with us, but mutual aid, we don't really have a mutual aid unless we have the Big Boatyard boat. It's all Long Island giving to us, and we really don't give anything back. So it kind of does scream, we need a boat. We actually responded this year to Falmouth with Long Island and helped save a person who'd been in the water for 4 or 5 hours. Falmouth appreciated that a lot. And I don't want to underscore the need for mutual aid. So we receive a lot of mutual aid. When we have a fire out here, on those rare occasions, Yarmouth and Cumberland come automatically. That's huge. We don't have the personnel to maintain if we have a real structure fire. So we depend on them. So this is a way for us to reciprocate, Yarmouth, Cumberland, Falmouth, Long Island, and everything. So I think it is really important.
So do I take this to be a request from fire department, fire and rescue?
I would say yes. We haven't made an official request, but yes. I mean, we've talked about it over the years, and the idea's been shot down, and I think Doug let us say it all. I think it's time that we realize that it does take money, and I think we have a pretty good idea of what we need. I feel.
Well, I was just writing down, obviously putting together a work group, but I think if just as a starting point, if the request formally did come from the fire and rescue, perhaps internally you could at least do some initial work group work, like, okay, sort of what's the rationale, what are the actual needs, sort of what would the logistical details and or questions be, kind of who, what, when, where, why, like where we put it, who would run it, who would drive it, all those kind of things. Take at least a first stab at it.
Yep.
And then maybe bring that back to us to
That's pretty easy.
start rolling with it.
We've got 90% of that done already. Yeah, that's no problem.
Just maybe put it together and pack it.
Yep.
So I think what Hart's suggesting, when I would agree, is if you could come back with a proposal with as much specifics as you can put together to the board. And I would also include whether there's any funding opportunities. And so I was meeting with Ellie today and mentioned this, and so she was gonna do a little research to see if she could find anything on that. She did mention that Harpswell had recently been actually gifted a boat
Yeah.
to the tune of $250,000 apparently. So, she was gonna just check with them and see, because that was just last year apparently. And I think one of the things is, how, I assume if it has a specific purpose in terms of rescue, that may not be, what's the priority of the boat and how multi-purpose can it be? Because, I think that's a question, because what a harbor master might need might be different than what the rescue needs.
Yeah. No, I think in my eyes, and I feel like I have a fair amount of knowledge about the situation. It seems I've been the one responding to all the calls on the water, and I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've talked to other agencies all across the country about different types of boats, but really I think the type of boat roughly that would fit the bill best would be something similar to what the boatyard has.
Yeah.
Seems pretty, different design, but for layout, but overall basically that type of boat.
And, is it worthwhile for Ellie to explore whether there's any funding opportunities?
I think it'd be great, yeah.
Okay, so we'll put her on.
I wouldn't mind talking to her if she wants to contact me so
Okay.
that we can get her in the right area. I don't want to get our hopes up and wasted efforts on a boat that really doesn't fit our needs or something.
Well, I think she's just looking into grant opportunities, that's all. I don't think she's getting into the boat type, so. And, so I think if you guys, once you have a chance to put sort of the specifics together, send them to Vika, and then she can provide it to us, and we can put her again on the agenda for the select board meeting.
Sounds great.
And we appreciate you coming.
Yep. We will.
And I guess, I don't even know if I'm supposed to ask whether the public has any questions about this proposal. I guess I should. So did the public have any questions about sort of what we just heard tonight, which was really in response to a letter from Doug Ross, which is sort of a communication to the board? Any questions from the public or comments? We're gonna move on. So the next item on the agenda is 2564, to review the Coastal Water Commission's recommendation concerning wharf repairs and take any necessary action. So the Coastal Waters Commission submitted a memorandum to the select board outlining some of the issues with the pilings that need to be repaired, and sort of made some specific recommendations. And I think, Herb, if you want to get up again for people who maybe haven't seen this summary, and kind of just quickly describe what Coastal Waters is recommending.
Okay. I sit on the Coastal Waters Commission as secretary. We were contacted by email by Jeff Westcott, indicating that there was a problem with one of the pilings being cracked on the Cousins Island side on the boat. And subsequent to that, Jeff acquired a couple of quotes, and Town Administrator Vika asked Coastal Waters Commission if they would review those quotes and provide some input on that, and make a recommendation. So on August 28th, the Coastal Waters Committee did that and wrote up the memorandum that you see, that you have in the packet. I don't think you don't have the memorandum that I wrote to Coastal Waters. Right? All that really does is lay out the timeline, so that one of our questions in Coastal Waters is how do these, what's the process by which an issue is reported, who takes control of it, who's responsible for it, who reports to who, where do those things go. So I laid out a kind of timeline just of that kind of thing, where the information came from, who told us what we were expecting to do with it. So there is another memo if you're interested in that. And I don't refer to that, but I kind of assume the Coastal Waters Commission had that information when we came up with the memo. So briefly, what we did was we just simply looked at, given an odd, there's another part to that. There's a second project that Jeff looked into at the same time. So the quotes covered two different projects. The second project is on the Stone Wharf side, and it is the two floats that we label B1 and B2 that are right in front of the ferry that you take a ladder down to. Those metal posts, the metal pilings that are there, if you stand up there, there's three of them. There's supposed to be four. There's three of them. One is gone. The other two, if you stand up the top and do this, they kind of do this, except for one of them. So two of them are not attached to the bottom. Jeff also let us know that. He included that in his work getting the quotes, and so we reviewed that as well. Okay, so we have some general, the Coastal Waters has some general opinions about how we should be interacting with vendors. We, I guess, tend to like smaller contractors because they think they understand better how we operate as a small town. They think they're a little bit more facile, a little bit more responsive maybe than some of the big contractors. So that's kind of a predisposition that I just wanted to make clear. So our first recommendation was that when possible, the board establish long-term relationships with vendors related to critical infrastructure, and we believe this is easier and more effective with smaller vendors. So that's just to set the groundwork for you guys. Then we went on and looked at the Cousins recommendations. The Cousins, you don't want to go through the proposal options or anything like that, right? We spent 2 hours putting this together, so I would spare you the details, but feel free to ask questions about how we arrived at this. So the Cousins recommendation is that we recommend replacing all 6 pilings. One vendor was going to replace only the 2 pilings and not the 4 support pilings. The other vendor was going to, well, we're doing either. The other vendor gave us a per piling price of $5,000. We can replace as many as we want. Coastal Waters is recommending replacing all of them so that we know they're all the same age, we know what they are, and we can plan to replace them on a kind of a regular basis. The next recommendation is, during construction, both vendors suggested that they could work with CTC so that there was minimal interference with the ferry, and really, they both sort of promised no interference, which seems feasible. Most of the work would probably be done from the side, of the barge, and wouldn't be on that face. However, we can expect some problems with the outboard people who use the back of it. So the Coastal Waters is recommending that the harbor master work with people who use that float with months, and, you know, with scheduling and staying off the float when necessary, possibly finding alternatives. We discussed that with the harbor master who was present at this meeting. He said that shouldn't be a problem. And then the second part of their recommendation is that the vendor should work with CTC to assure continued use of the support through the construction. The next recommendation is a recommendation to contract with one of the specific vendors, and that is Waypoint Constructors. It's a relatively new entity on Casco Bay. The two quotes and proposals that we got, one was from Bancroft, which is, you know, as you know, a very large company. They're doing the work down at Chandler's. They're, you know, a very big contractor. They've done work for us before, and you know, they're fine. They sent like 6 guys to do the quote, and the other guy showed up on his own, which was, the Coastal Waters took it as a positive sign, take it as you will. So we are recommending that you contract with Waypoint Constructors, based in part on recommendation 1, which is forming long-term relationships with contractors, but also by the cost quote itself for those six pilings. Basically, Bancroft was suggesting $40,000 to replace 2 pilings, not the support pilings. Waypoints was suggesting that to just replace those 2 was like $16,000 to do the same work, essentially. Since we have recommended all 6, the cost would be 6 times 5, 30, plus mobilization, so $34,000, something like that. Which is still less than Bancroft for, you know, what they were planning on doing. So that's the contract we're recommending. Number 5, in terms of funding, I won't go through the nitty-gritty of this, but we believe there is sufficient funds. It's documented here if anybody wants to look or you can ask questions. But the 90-20 reserve account for floats and gangways, the town was very generous in giving us $95,000 last year to put into that. Our rationale for that amount of money was $50,000 for the Chandler's pilings, $15,000 for one new float in the tie-up area, $15,000 to replace the gangway, and $15,000 to go towards the minimum balance, which we recommended about $40,000 for that account for emergencies like this. So, given that that minimum balance is set for emergencies like this, the number I'm using is $18,000. That's the balance of that account based on the Trias savings report. I have not contacted the bookkeeper to find out if we have spent any money out of that since that was June 1st, I think. We haven't? Okay, so that $18,000 should be there. $15,000 that we added into that would be 33 covered on its own. Even if it didn't, we recently got a grant to do the float that we raised $15,000 for, so that's only going to cost us $5,000, so it's an extra $10,000. So we believe without altering any of the plans, you can pay for Cousins' side with the funds as I documented here and described in just that. So that's Cousins. You want to get questions for Cousins, or do you want me to do the Stonewall side? Stonewall side is simple, 3.
Yeah, just finish. Yeah.
Just keep going. Stone Wharf. We recommend that you schedule the Stone Wharf pier replacement project should be coincident, not adjacent to, coincident with the Cousins Island pile replacement, so do it at the same time. That will, according to the Waypoint's estimate, that would save about $6,000 in mobilization costs. It's $3,000 for him to mobilize each time. So if he's doing both projects, he's going to save you $6,000 in mobilization. Coastal Waters recommends requesting that the selected vendor revise their estimate using worst-case scenario, i.e. quote the cost of a lower support bracket, removing the assumptions that piles can be driven to an appropriate depth that close to the pier without hitting bedrock. That's a little, it's not a very good sentence, but, say my wife's on her head. So the issue is, we don't know where ledge is there. In fact, Bancroft hasn't even given us the quote yet, is that still true?
They said it was in the 30,000 range.
Okay, about the same as Waypoint. We didn't have that information when we did this, because they were concerned about where the ledge was, and asked for more information, which Jeff both provided that survey. So it's unknown how deep we can get the piles there. And Bancroft, I think they still believe this, correct me if I'm wrong, that if they can't get them into a sufficient depth, they would put at the bottom end, they would pin to the stones in the stone wharf and put a second brace, so it would basically be a freestanding fender pile attached to the stone wharf. Waypoint said the same thing, but didn't give a cost. And so we're just suggesting that that cost be obtained and that we just design it that way instead of waiting and seeing, just put the extra effort into it. Another difference that we noticed in the quotes, I don't even think I enumerated it here, was Bancroft was going to replace it with metal, and no one can figure out why metal was used there. It's the only metal in any of our systems in the first place, except for maybe the ledge. Waypoints did not quote, they quoted wood, the same wooden piles that we use everywhere else. And that was a difference that we took into consideration. We tended to think that wooden piles would hold up better and be cheaper as in the long run. Number 8, the last one, we recommend funding this project in one of two ways. So we raised $50,000 for the Chandler's pilings, the fender pilings, the 6 fender pilings down there. That's going to also require a SHIP grant. We have no plan for getting those things replaced as far as I know. They've already replaced all the piles underneath the deck, so I don't know that they're coming back to do any more pilings. And do we know if
Yeah,
they're planning on doing that? They are planning on coming back to do just those 6 piles
I think so.
this year?
That was the direction that they had from the town, is that
Okay.
that's something that the town,
Okay, and we have not
Plan to
yet
do.
pursued a grant for the extra
No.
50,000?
It isn't the total, I thought the total cost was 95,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, round numbers. I mean, we raised 40.
So
I
the
think we
town,
raised
the town share is 95,000. If we get a SHIP grant, the town share is round numbers 50,000.
Right.
If we don't get a SHIP grant, it's 95,000.
Right, and so we were, at last town meeting, we were assuming we were gonna go for a SHIP grant. So I'm not aware where that stands, that project stands, but one of our options, given the information we had, which was that we didn't see it happening in the near future, was to use some of that $50,000 and re-raise the money for that purpose next fiscal year. Or hold a special town meeting and ask for $35,000 to cover it. That's it. Thank you.
And
So, I've
Jeff,
also-
I was just gonna say, Jeff, did you want to, one question, Herb, is on the stone wharf, side, is there a ballpark number?
Yeah, what Jeff said, 30, I think Waypoint's estimate was 30,
I don't think we have that.
it's not in here.
32, 32,880 is waypoints, and Bancroft said was in the 30s.
And that's without these brackets.
And if you had to use, as for potential lower grades attachment to the pier, you could use $500 as a budget allowance, but I think we would come in below that depending on what the exact situation is. So if they had to do lower brackets,
Per pair?
he doesn't say that, but even if he did, that's $2,000, it would still come in under the projected 70 that we were talking about.
So, do I understand correctly, the cousin side would be on the order of 37,000 round numbers if we do all 6 pilings. The cost to do the required repairs on the Shabig side at the stone wharf is 30 to 35,000.
33,000 for waypoints and about the same, about a wash for those. I do think they are using metal pilings there, right? Is that what they quoted?
On
Bancroft on Stonewall.
Bancroft, on.
They talked about replacing
Yeah.
them in kind.
Yes.
For sure. For what that's worth.
And Jeff, did you have anything, since this has been a bit of a team effort, did you have anything you wanted to add? And if you do, could you come up front just so we know? Thanks.
One thing worth mentioning for the public is both of these issues did kind of fall in our lap within the last couple of weeks, unplanned from one another, where the town figured out that there was a broken piling that needed emergency repair, and then there were other pilings that were failing, so both sides, an unexpected, unplanned, expensive fix that is needed.
So both companies and both gentlemen were very generous, and they came out relatively quickly within 3 to 5 days of us contacting them. Both very professional. Again, as Herb said, the Waypoint contractors, I call them up and I'm talking to the owner of the company. Bancroft, I call them up, I talk to the project manager, who then has to go to his supervisor, who then has to go to his supervisor. So it's much more responsive from Waypoint. He used to work for Chimbro. He's got the equipment. He's willing to build a long-term relationship, i.e., hey, you need 3 to 5 pilings replaced every 3 to 5 years. Let's get on a schedule, and we can do that. So as far as the capital planning, that would be something, again, long-term relationships with this vendor. As far as getting it done this year, the critical one is Cousins. It's our bread and butter, back and forth. The Stone Pier side, we're talking about the same money within the same budget year. So to be able to put it off for 2 brand new floats, that if they go floating away and cause property damage somewhere, it doesn't make sense to put it off. So Coastal Waters Commission was like, right, since he's here doing this, let's have him do this as well. So I agree with what Coastal Waters Commission came up with their for recommendations. Waypoint Contractors has a list of references we can call as well. He's anxious to get started on it before the winter season, because that's when he actually gets busy. So again, this would fix the Cousin side way before the harsh winter weather. The floats coming out on the Stone Pier side, we could remove them early if we have to. It doesn't affect more than 2 or 3 boats. And he would have free reign to replace all 4 of those pilings as well. Questions?
Any questions from the board for Herb or Jeff?
Which gangway is in the process of being replaced?
So, question. The gangway between the CTC ferry and the commercial float was damaged several years ago. There are some welds that are broken on it and have been broken, and our fine citizen there, Mark Dyer, went down and screwed some plywood down to hold it together.
So it would be replaced, or it would be replaced just as it is, the same type of,
Well, that was a constructed, I think that was constructed here on the island. It'll be a commercial one that we bid out.
okay, thank you.
So we don't have a hard estimate on that. There's some verbal. We think $15,000 will cover it.
And I'd like to ask a second question. When you're talking about the pilings on Cousins, those are commonly referred to as the dolphins, correct?
Yeah, it's 2 support piles and a fender
And
pile.
the fender pile. And would they be replaced with the same type of construction in the same location? So that gangway would be able to be reused?
Yes, and the float in that gangway, it would be consistent with those.
Good, thank you. Nice work.
Any more questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Mark, so if you could, somebody could sit, oh, go ahead. That's right, you gotta come up, this is an awkward deal.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta come up.
I'd like to thank Coastal Water and Jeff and the road crew for getting on the Cousins Island situation. And I personally sent a message to Jeff thanking them for the temporary repair over there. I agree with trying to contract with this new individual who I believe may have taken over Roger Hale's company from Portland, who was a marine contractor for a long time in the area. So I think he's probably eager to start building a reputation. And if you can get a working relationship with a smaller company, an individual like that, not so similar to the company that we have with the road paving now, but where we started with the road paving, then you can keep that relationship working and get things done on a more effective basis. I agree with all the recommendations. I would shy away from metal pilings. I can answer the question, why were the metal pilings put in there? I believe that we just put them in there ourselves with leftover well casing and our backhoe to try to save some time and money while we got the town started. That's basically how it went. And there is some ledge there. But I would replace everything with wood pilings if it were me. And over at the Cousins side, maybe Herb and Jeff know this answer, maybe they don't. If they put the new 2 sets of 3 pilings in, will they be bolted and strapped with the stainless cable?
Bancroft specifically said that they would replace all that mechanism. The other quote doesn't mention it, so I don't know the answer to that. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get a big thing going.
No, it's okay, it's.
So when we talked about the wire wrapping at the top, he wasn't too high on it because he's like, nobody does this anywhere else. The bolts going through should be fine and hold it strong enough. He goes, I really don't see these around anywhere. It could be a further follow-up question with him as this progress moves forward, but he wasn't too concerned about having wire wrapping at the top or weight point.
Okay.
And I will leave that to the marine geeks to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I guess, I have a question for the town administrator in terms of the funding sources and sort of, so one of these funds that the Cousins Island side would be, if I understand correctly, is the Reserve Fund 90/20, floats and gangways, and then the other Stone Wharf side is to be determined, if that's right. And I guess in terms of the 90/20, this is probably an unpopular question, but does CTC provide any funding for maintenance of either side of the stone wharf or the Pleasant side?
There is an agreement that is in line with the lease agreements and all of the other interjacent agreements that we have with CTC relative to Cousins Island and the maintenance and things like that. There is one agreement that is fairly old that states that they would provide $2,000 annually to the town, but not to exceed $25,000, which that has been provided and that has been reached. I don't have any clear information as far as what the limitations on the use of that is, but there isn't any additional ongoing funds that is provided by CTC or any split contribution relative to any of the maintenance to the infrastructure.
So does that money go into 90/20?
There is a separate account that just holds that money.
So that's capped at 25, if
Yeah.
that's where it's sitting?
Yeah.
And we have that account?
I can provide the board with that agreement, because I'm assuming most of you probably have never seen it or have not seen it.
And was that discretionary, that we can use that for?
Well, that's what Vika's saying, that she's not aware of any restrictions. And I guess I think $2,000 a year and not for who knows how long, I guess, 15, whatever, 12 years, and then no contribution since is, I don't know, I think this is a conversation we need to consider having with the Shabik Transportation Company, because I was on the boat a couple times this summer when they really slammed into the float. And I guess, do we know for a fact that we did, how the damage occurred, how the split occurred to the pilot?
I'll put a different hat on. I also sit on the CTC board. I had a simple conversation with Matt about both of these things to let him know that town was looking at this. His take, and you should probably get this documented from him, but his take was that CTC had let us know that there were some issues with the pilings at various times. His take on it was that those piles are those piles are old. The Coastal Waters believes they're older than 2011, which was when the float was replaced and the support pilings were put in. But those piles were not replaced at that time. If memory serves, Coastal Waters Group. And Matt's take on it is that that's normal wear for those two piles. I'm sure he would welcome a conversation with the town administrator to talk about that. He did say that there was no specific incident reported where his crew didn't report the break to him, and we just believe it's like that. On the other side, when we talk about replacing the gangway, which was damaged by CTC, he suggested that at the time it happened, they offered some money, but it hasn't been replaced. My personal impression from that conversation was that they were sent a bill for a portion of that they would probably pay that. But again, the conversation would be in order.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks. So I think maybe providing us with a copy of the current agreement and the board can kind of look at that. So thanks to Coastal Waters and Jeff for this information. I think it sounds like this is time critical in terms of at least the Cousins side. Is that correct? And Vika, are you comfortable with us Do you feel there's adequate funding in 90/20 to move forward with at least the cousin side, so that could be up to 37,000, is that right?
I do. I think if you're asking me for my opinion, I would say that if you would make a motion to recommend that we engage in a contracted services with Waypoint, which is the company that is being recommended by Coastal Waters. And then if you want to provide a dollar amount not to exceed for the Cousins one, for the Stone Pier, at this point, I don't feel comfortable really saying one way or another. I think we need a little, personally, I think we need a little bit more concrete quote or something a little bit more detailed before I can feel comfortable coming back with a recommendation, but at least to start something on Cousins or to show the contractor that we're serious to start the progress and moving forward, a form of motion to allow me to ask, the either Coastal Waters or Jeff to start that process, definitely would be needed.
So, and I would ask if you make a motion, I think that the estimate is 36,900 and something, so maybe keep it a little extra, just so we don't have to come back to the board, so 40,000 as a round number seems like it might be good. So does anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Okay, Howard?
Make a motion that the town enter into contract with Waypoint Construction for the replacement of the 6 piers at Cousins Island for an amount not to exceed $40,000.
And one slight amendment, 6 pilings.
6 pilings, yeah.
Second?
Oh,
Yeah.
from reserve account 9020?
And, right, from reserve account 920.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second? Eliza Jane, any discussion? Yep, Richard?
Since it was mentioned that CTC has been giving 2,000 a year, and there's now a set number of 24,000 as some other account, can we not tap that fund for this project?
What do we need for this one?
For this one or either the next one, either one of these, that's 24,000, then that would restart them contributing 2,000 a year.
No, the way that I understand it, the agreement is that they contribute $2,000 a year, which they had, until they reach $25,000, and then it stops. It doesn't mean that when you wipe it out, they start contributing again. That's how I read it, and that's how I understood it. And that's, I will forward that to you with whatever information that I have. You can look into it. Right now, I don't feel comfortable making a recommendation to you to say, use that money.
You do feel?
No, I don't.
You don't, okay. Right, so, but it would be good to review that for later use.
Eliza Jane?
And one other thing, if we were to look at replacing the pilings at the Stone Pier, being able to save the $6,000, can we move this along so that's still a possibility?
In other words, timing wise, we can get them, they can get started on the Cousins Island side, but before they finish, do you
Yeah,
think we can move and get?
I think we need a more formal proposal for, what I understand is for the stone wharf side, we need a more formal proposal and a more reliable estimate. We could at the next meeting potentially make a motion to continue with that.
I don't anticipate that any of this is gonna start and be done in the next 2 weeks, and I'm hoping that in the next 2 weeks, we have something more concrete with a better or with a more confident recommendation that could be brought to you to then tie both projects together, so then the contractor has what they need.
Thank you. Finally, there was a mention of damage that was caused to a gangway by CTC. Is that safe now? Is there any more attention that needs to be paid to that?
Yeah, Mark repaired it.
Oh, is that the one that I just already asked about?
Yeah.
Herb, do you have something important to say?
Well,
It is to him.
probably not. Full disclosure, Waypoints is the contractor to which CTC sold the Dove Key. It
Okay.
shouldn't make any difference,
I
but it's
appreciate
one of those connections that I just want to put it out.
Okay, much appreciated. Okay, so any more discussion by the board? Any more discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Community.
Oh. Any public discussion on this vote? Or motion? Okay, all in favor, thank you, like Jane. All right, we're just trying to buzz through these. Thank you, folks of water. Item 2565, to discuss the memo received from the Finance Committee and the committee's recommendations. 1, about a townwide reevaluation, and 2, about the solar array buyout. So we all received in our packet the memo from the Finance Committee, and I would invite the Finance Committee to come up and summarize if they want to. I think it would be good for the public if they could.
Okay, John Rent, Chair of the Finance Committee. Reevaluation. That's been a topic that's been discussed by the Select Board occasionally over the last year. And the Finance Committee has interfaced with the assessor a few times in the last year to say, what's going on, how are we doing, etc. There hasn't been a full real estate reevaluation, reassessment for a long time. The assessor believes that, doesn't understand how structure values were calculated the last time the assessment was done. There's a formula and a structure, quality construction, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, and then variations from that of plus or minus 5 or 10%. In the records, he doesn't understand how structures were evaluated last time. He also believes there are significant changes in land values over time. So we're recommending that the town move forward with a full reassessment of real estate values. I think it's a good idea to do it while we have the current, to begin the process while we have the current assessor, so he can be part of pulling together the request for quotes. For example, if you did a complete reassessment, an assessor would go out and measure every building and take new pictures, and that's a lengthy process. The current assessor doesn't think that needs to be done. He thinks each property needs to be looked at, determine that the pictures we have are accurate, no additions or changes have been made. We'll use the information we have. Where he sees that a change has been made, then they do the full measure, figure the square footage, etc. So, and then as we move forward over the next few years, we're potentially going to have some bond issues that come up that could significantly impact our taxes. And we think it's fair for people to understand what their assessed value is and what impact bonding and tax increases might have based on a known valuation for their property. The purpose of a complete reassessment is to make taxes fair for people. Some people go up, some people stay the same proportionately, maybe some people pay less of the total tax bill than they would have. You may have read in the newspapers lots of issues in Yarmouth and Portland with their complete reevaluations. One of the things in Yarmouth was people said, I wouldn't have supported this multi-million, I think it was a $40 million school project if I'd known what the impact was gonna be on my taxes. So the finance committee just wanted to encourage the board to move forward with this project. I think Vic is supportive of it. You talked about getting it started this fall. And there is money in a reserve account to go forward with the work.
Just a couple, one of that company, the article in the Press Herald, one of the things that it mentioned taxes and numbers 4 times. And 3 of them were mentioned by people going, well, my house went up 37%, well, my house went up 28%. Not until the end of the article did they say that the net effect on taxes was 7%, which was a real effect on it. But I think, as John says, it's a lot of things have happened since they've done the reevaluation. And people, it's basically the town budget's gonna stay the same, it's just gonna be divided by a different number. So people's houses have gone up at different rates. There's been additions done, there's been brand new buildings done. So it's just what John said about making it fair. Remember that they say, well, my house went up 40%, mine went. It's basically the town budget is the town budget, and this would be divided by this as they figure it out. The last thing is that we are working also on tax relief measures. There are different measures in different towns that we're in the process of working on to see that it may help some people.
You mean like a circuit breaker?
Yeah, they call them circuit breakers. They can be assessed, it can be paid for through your estate when you die. I mean, there are different methods to doing it, but there is, in Maine, there are programs to do that, so people can apply for those things. So that's on the agenda too.
Great. So any questions from the board for the finance committee on the reval recommendation? Eliza Jane.
Yes, thank you for the work that you've been doing. How long is it anticipated this reevaluation will take?
I have no idea.
Okay.
The assessor said that it could take up to 2 years sometimes, and that's why they encouraged us to start the process sooner than later. They had, when at the budget process, when we started the budget process, they asked what we had set aside. They recommended we add an additional $10,000 into that reserve account, which was appropriated at town meeting. So there is about $90,000 in change in that reserve account for this, which they felt was pretty accurate relative to the size of our town and what the work would entail. They have provided me with some sample RFPs, and so in the next couple of meetings, that will be brought forward in front of you to approve of and move forward with sending out an RFP to get that process started.
And do I recall that hearing in one of these meetings before, about 30% go up, 30% properties decrease? Is there?
I would
do you have
say,
any idea?
I wouldn't even guess.
Okay.
Let's just, people can answer that question themselves and can say, has your property gone up the same percentage as somebody else's? Everybody can answer that question. If the answer is yes, then that means it won't be across the board. But to predict is, I think it's very dangerous.
Okay. And we have such unique properties here compared to
Absolutely.
comparables.
Absolutely.
Okay, the other thing is that looking at these big projects that we're facing here in the town, getting this foundation ready so that we have a good grasp of how it's going to start impacting taxes is really important. So thank you for looking into this.
And Vika, do we need a formal motion on this from your perspective? Or
No, what you would need is when the RFP is brought forward to you, for you to make a motion to then authorize me to advertise it out, so then we can get any interested parties to provide their proposals that then would be brought forth in front of you. You would vote on that and then engage in a contract with them.
And do you have a timeline for that?
So that will probably something that will be on the agenda in the next, probably 1 or 2 meetings would be my guess,
Okay.
depending on how other things are staggered.
So that said, is the board, on board with the revals, or any concerns here from the board about a revaluation? Okay, any comments or questions from the public about a revaluation?
Is the RFP and the responses public?
So, yeah,
According to Eliza's comment about taxes are reported, I just want to ask the select board, do we get any benefits from the transfer of taxes from sales of property on the island today?
No.
No.
no. You mean, is there like a transfer tax on property? No.
Currently, the 3% transfer tax that is in the state of Maine is 1.5% is paid for by seller and buyer. And looking at any municipal transfer tax means going to the Department of Taxation and going to the legislation. So while that's an idea that's been tossed about in the past for the state of Maine, there's no motion on that I know of in the state of Maine right now.
Will the board consider a transfer tax on our property?
The board looked into this, and I've talked with the fabulous Maddie Daughtry about this. It does need to go through the Department of Taxation up in Augusta, and will take an act of the legislature.
And I do think, some state of Massachusetts, some of the islands have definitely pursued that. I think that is an important topic, but maybe for another discussion, because I want to let John get through. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I don't disagree. I would want John to follow up with just the solar array, so he can finish up.
So the select board asked the finance committee to look at, should we purchase the solar array now, or should we continue under the power purchase agreement with Revision Energy? And so there's a power purchase agreement that started in 2017. Every year, the town has the option to buy the solar array at the fair market value. So there's a schedule, and there's projected savings every year if you buy it or you don't buy it. So we looked at the savings from now through the end of the initial term, which is 2038, and also through a 5-year extension, which is 2043. So over the remaining 18 years of the contract, if we purchase the array now for $77,000, there would be $218,000 worth of savings. If we delay the purchase until 2038, the projected savings is $182,000. So the difference is $35,000, all right? If we put out 77 now, we save an additional $35,000 over the next 18 years. That's not a very big return on investment. So the Finance Committee recommends that the town not purchase the array until the end of the contract in fiscal year 2038. Okay. There is a reserve account to purchase the solar array that has approximately $92,000 in it. If we're going to purchase the solar array in 2038, we'll only need $7,600 then. So if we leave approximately $5,000 in that reserve account, it makes 3 or 4% a year. We'll have the money to buy it in reserve account in 2038, but there'll be approximately $86,000, $87,000 that could be removed from the reserve account and used somewhere else. Okay, it could be reused to reduce a bond that we might need for the stone pier. It could be used to pay for a fire and rescue, both, whatever. So our recommendation, Finance Committee, is wait until 2038, reallocate reserve funds, and that can be done as part of the fiscal year 27 budgeting process. When all the reserve accounts are looked at, we figure out what we need and what the priorities are. Sure.
Just a couple of things. One of the things that can be misleading about these giant spreadsheets is they're asking you to spend money today for a future thing. It's like when you buy life insurance, they say at the end of the 25 years of this, you'll have $200,000. You have to look at that in present day dollars, because the $200,000 18 years from now is way less, way less. So you do that kind of thing. So that was part of the evaluation, was what John's talking about, using the present value of money now and when you make a financial decision now, you can't use present value dollars looking at something saving. The other big thing was the maintenance.
Yeah, we
Maintenance.
avoid any maintenance because revision continues to do that.
And it happened, there was a big one, what, a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of money, so, anyway.
So I will say it's been a mystery to me how to evaluate this. The climate action team looked at it first and basically came up with it wasn't an environmental decision, it's a financial decision, so we kicked it to the finance committee, and I'm really glad we did that, because I think they did a good analysis. So I think this makes me realize how beneficial it's been already to have a finance committee. And so I guess I would open it up to questions from the board about the recommendation, which I don't think you need to take any specific action tonight on. So, David?
My only question is, what's the downside of this approach? Is there one?
I don't think so, because the town has the option every year to do a buyout.
We could, okay, it's not.
If you take the money out of the reserve account, you have to figure out where it's going to come from, but
You don't own them, that's really the big thing, is you don't own them.
Right, but the maintenance contract, that's huge.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that.
yeah, they also sell their energy credits that they sell as part of the benefit, and they do the insurance, so with the town's bandwidth, the town doesn't need to deal with all those seemingly small issues that can take some time.
And we think it'll still be working in 2038.
Potentially, it's gonna work for 20 years after that, it's gonna be pure savings after that.
Great, thank you.
Well, yeah, I actually have a question. So on the array, if some of the panels go bad, do they replace those? How does that work?
I believe they would have to, yeah,
So that's part of the maintenance contract, so.
yeah.
We don't want to do that.
We're basically avoiding taking the liability, but, yeah,
Nice work.
that sounds good to me.
It's a homeowner.
Sorry, I think I read that 98% of the town's energy budget is produced by this?
Yeah.
Okay. If,
Yeah, it has in the last 6 years, about 98% of the town's consumption is
have you ever gone over 100%? Meaning CMP won't compensate you for that, right?
Right.
So are you at maximum capacity?
You only get paid for what the array's being produced, right? What the array's producing.
Well, like in my house, I have a solar array and I contribute to another property so that I basically am paying $13 a month. But any excess capacity is just CMPs. So I guess what I'm asking is, it seems like you're at the optimal amount of capacity if you're averaging 90.
Yeah, it was well sized, I believe, that is the analysis over the last 6 years. Now, the town's in the process of adding heat pumps to the school, the
They're up and
town
running.
office, and the fire department.
They're up and
So
running.
we won't be producing 98% of our energy.
Right, but you'd be
As we go
offsetting the
forward.
oil expenses.
Yep, right.
I believe on the open market, it's 24 cents a kilowatt hour, and we're buying it at 14 cents a kilowatt hour with the solar panels, so I mean, that in itself is huge savings.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, next. 2566, to discuss the communication received from Bruce Anderson on behalf of the residents at South Shore Drive in relation to the road repair project and determine next steps if necessary. And in our packet was a communication from Bruce, where I guess, and I don't know, Bruce, are you here? Yeah, do you want to just describe, it might be easier, because normally I'd ask Vika to do that, but I'm not going to ask her to do that.
As soon as all the chance to do the work, I'm losing my voice. That's a sign. It's just me and the dog, he doesn't care one way or the other. The letter is basically built on two assumptions. One is that the town doesn't have an account someplace, but I'm willing to have cash to deal with infrastructure issues, and then the other one is that you folks went to the voters in the spring or this fall or whatever, that in fact the appetite to bond and come up and finance hundreds of thousands of dollars in South Shore Drive probably wouldn't muster much support. So I've had a little involvement in public-private relationships in the past, completely different what we're talking about here. We had traded millions of dollars to one state for the rights to the property along the highway, which we built. Concessions, we put rest areas in, gas stations, and a bunch of other things that we basically got the money back out of a period of about 20 years. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the fact that we believe there may be some sources of funding which you as a municipality would historically go look at, or in fact that we have access to, which you might not. Having said that, the plan would still be just that you serve as kind of an auxiliary exploratory funding operation with, and pass everything back to the town. There's no desire to operate independently by a stretch of the imagination. So we had a meeting. There was some, what I thought was some very creative thoughts that came out. I'm not comfortable sharing with you tonight, primarily because I think that I want to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood is comfortable before we start passing some ideas through. I think this is some, and I can find this out fairly easily. There may be some legal issues as how money for the project is acquired based on the FEMA involvement. My experience with government agencies is that sometimes they get a little, not squeamish, but they have issues with private generation of funds, even though they need the money. So I think what we were really looking for tonight was your interest in maybe having a more detailed meeting where I'm not sure I know personally, and I can't speak for anybody else. I'm really what you folks have done, or what you plan on doing, or if there was a plan. I know that Vika was able to get an extension of the FEMA grant, I believe to next year.
26.
9/30. So there's a year there. If there does need to be a public vote on some portion of the funding, and it goes to June, that's, you could be looking at another extension, assuming that we don't have a failure out there in the meantime. So I believe what we're asking for tonight is to have another meeting, and where we can address to you what we're thinking, and you can share with us what's going on so far.
Okay, and I guess before we leave, does the board have any questions from Bruce about this?
I have one question. How many property owners are affected that are
There's
involved?
9, 10, yeah.
10?
And I have another question. This communication came from you, but you described it as being the residents.
Well, I've been the liaison between the neighborhood.
Right, so are all the residents in favor of this?
They are.
approach?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think most of them are here this evening.
okay.
I think there's only 2 households that are not represented.
We're on the bright side.
And just to bring the public up to date, the FEMA money is almost 900,000 that we received to repair South Shore Drive.
Less than that. It's closer to like 760,
Okay, so
770, yeah, 800,000 is.
800,000. The rough estimates that we've received from the engineer for two types of designs, one is 1.2 million and one is about 1.5. So we're talking, 4 to 600,000 over what FEMA has awarded the town for the repair. I think what we heard today from the engineering firm is that those are their best guess or estimates, and I think they're probably pretty, thoughtful estimates based on actual construction projects they're doing that are quite similar. But we won't know what the costs are until we get bids. And there's a there's a bid process that's required through FEMA. And it's, there's quite a few requirements relative to that, and they have to comply with the FEMA bidding, and contracting requirements. So I think they tried to give us the best number, but the only way we will know is, it sounds like, to really put out an RFP and get an actual bid. So the other thing is, whatever we do as a town needs to be approved at town meeting. So I think what Bruce is referring to is the gap between what FEMA has awarded and what the project may require. And, because there's more than one option, I don't know if you're expressing that the residents are favoring the more expensive option, or if you're just assuming the town might not support either option, I guess. But I think that's for a future conversation, but that's the gist of the situation. So.
Did you want to touch on this morning, they were talking a little bit about, feasibility possibly of doing some downscaling on the design to help lessen the.
So we did ask them, we had tasked them with the question, how, can you reconsider the design and get closer to the amount of the FEMA award? And what they told us today is the only way to really do that is to, decrease the linear footage of the stabilization project. And they're, that's feasible, it may not be advisable. And so there is no sort of design change that they felt they could make that would reduce the cost for the existing linear extent of the wall. So kind of ironically, the town didn't qualify for funding from FEMA the first time around because it was not town-owned property, and then this time around, we do. So anyway, I think I appreciate you all coming tonight, and I guess I wanted to give the residents, besides Bruce, an opportunity to speak if there's anything they want to say. Anybody else of the group from South Shore Drive want to say anything?
I guess there was one question.
Could you come up to the front just because it's so that anybody listening on Zoom, thank you.
I had a question earlier this week, it's like my
And
house.
could you,
Oh, sorry, is there a particular?
yes, right.
That was like a stage, man, you gotta do the spot. I can get my spot. I'd asked earlier this week when we had a little exchange going on, is the fire department coming down? USPS is not coming down. I guess EMS did come down this last week. Is the fire department coming down with their truck? Are we getting services?
Our fire department and our public works crew, as things exist now, feel comfortable driving down that road.
Cool. Not starting a fire anytime
And
soon.
until they do, there's been some questions raised about, can we limit access to the road? Can we, as the road commissioner, I don't feel comfortable limiting access or making the recommendation that the select board limit access if our fire department and our public works crew feels comfortable going down. Until they do, I think it's a very slippery slope to
Literally.
trying to put any other rules or guidelines to it.
So I guess before we leave this proposal, does the board have any other questions for any, go ahead.
I do, Bruce, you just mentioned some legal issues and that they get a little squeamish. Could you elaborate, or is that too big a conversation for this forum? You have to stand up to answer. You can be on TV.
I'm retired as the senior manager for a really large construction company for marine and heavy construction operations, the entire eastern seaboard, part of the Caribbean and Canada. So I've seen a few of these things along the line. I spent my life negotiating with the government on contracts. As Carol alluded to, it's a very strict protocol that's established for these contracts. Having said that, my experience is, and this isn't just the government, there's a lot of things that change when construction starts. There's unknown site conditions, for example. People start to dig at something they had, regardless of pre-construction investigations, it didn't show up. And sometimes it's been, waste streams issues, for example. Sometimes it's obstructions such as ledge. My experience is that if they need help, there's often, I think, a pride of ownership thing comes in that.
And who's they?
Pardon me? A pride, in other words, they're saying, well, this is what we've got given you. This is what you have to do, regardless of the fact that what you're looking at now and what you're actually dealing with, what was in the documents, is not the same thing at all. So any input from the outside out, tends to sometimes have resistance. I've had some cash issues where we got financially involved, but I've had a lot of input on expertise, and it's not necessarily accepted gracefully. How's that? So.
Got it, thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions from the board?
No questions.
And I guess I would mention that we did discuss this a little bit today in the meeting with the engineer, and there is a grant program, the infrastructure grant fund, that will open up in January that he felt might be a good, I don't know we don't know yet what the criteria is or what the cap would be, but it might be worth looking at that to fill the gap. So that might, just to give you some idea, so we'll keep you appraised. And so the state has a new infrastructure program that they're, resiliency program, and I don't quite know, I don't think anybody knows yet what the funding's gonna be like, but there may be some opportunity to get some money there. And we are in a good position, having a design and pretty solid cost estimates to kind of justify it, so. Yeah.
So it just sounds like really a request then is to have a subsequent cooperative meeting or meeting time to discuss some of the ideas that you maybe have, and maybe any new information that we get on the one side. Are you seeing that happening in a select board meeting? I mean, I don't know how else we would meet. It'd have to be a public meeting, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can consider that. I think Vika has a thought about that, but.
So my recommendation would be, so where you have all these subcommittees, and so currently David and Carol are on that subcommittee, so if what I'm hearing is there is a request from the residents to have a meeting, my recommendation would be is we start with that, and then that subcommittee brings forth those recommendations to the select board for a discussion, where then it enters into a packet and becomes public, documentation and so forth. So if that's something that the board's interested in and want to pursue that suggestion, I would recommend that that's how we start it. I think it would move things along a little bit easier than trying to coordinate a public meeting with the select board determine whether it's public, whether it's a workshop, who participates, who doesn't, how well all that works, so.
And I guess I also feel like the board should consider, this is really the first big storm-related infrastructure project, Stone Pier is sort of an ongoing one, that we have dealt with, that we've received FEMA funding for, and I think we do need to consider, you know, that this is not just a single project, but it's a policy that we have to think about in terms of, you know, applying private resources to a public infrastructure project and how we would deal with that island-wide. Because, and not to say that, you know, we wouldn't entertain the idea, but I think it's not the last time we're probably gonna see road damage. And, you know, I think, thinking about how we wanna manage that in the, you know, global sense for the community is, we need to think about that. So that's all. I think it's, because I don't think this will be the last one, I think we need to just consider that aspect of it, and how it would work is sort of not in my wheelhouse, but I think there may be other communities that have already done this, for all I know, so I think we can find out. And I think we have a very, you know, obvious gap between what's needed and what is been provided to us by FEMA, but in a sense, I think it was quite a bonanza from FEMA, and I wouldn't assume that the community would not support a reasonable allocation to finish the project. So I think there's capacity and support in the community, most likely, to fill the gap to some extent, which, how far we can go on that, I don't know. But I think those questions are all to be answered, and yet, but I do want the board to think about kind of how we approach these projects in general, because I think it's important. Okay?
So do you want to leave it with Bruce contacting you then to?
I think Bruce can contact Vika, and then we can try to set up a meeting. Yeah. And I think it would be important, and maybe this process would benefit from some facilitation from GBCOG or somebody that, you know, not that I expect there to be problems, but it might. So I think we can think about the best way to go about this, because I want to be sure also that we're seeing, you know, everybody is comfortable expressing all the residents feel represented in the process, you know what I mean? I don't want them to feel like they can't. And I don't know how, I'm not an expert at how to operate those kind of things. So, but anyway, we will take the next step, and I think Bruce and Luca and I can work through that. Does that sound okay to you? Okay. Between the three of us. Okay. Next item on the agenda, so are we good? Everybody all set? Great. Next on the agenda is 2567, to review and adopt a revised communication policy. So this is, thank you for coming, folks. Thank you. Yep. And so this, I think I mentioned in my email to you guys, this is pretty much the policy that Vika had edited, that we had the last time, or had seen edited versions of, but in between, we also decided to add sort of the posting requirements, because right now, I think it's actually in our Selectboard ordinance, but it seems more appropriate to go in the communication ordinance, and the difference is we reduce the requirements of posting to just the store, the boat, and the town, and
Town website, the
Yeah.
boat, and Dougherty's Island Market.
because those seem to be the right locations, and not posting it at Chandler's, you know, boat shed seems reasonable to me, so. I guess, does anybody have any questions, want to make a motion?
I have questions, so
Yep.
I pulled up it looked almost identical to what we looked at the first time. I know it's version 2, and we had made a lot of those changes. which I brought a copy of, but I don't see them reflected in this.
Oh, is that right? I didn't check.
Well, I guess, so I took the last document I had that was edited and made the changes and incorporated them into this one. Did I miss things?
There were pretty substantial changes and additions, modifications and additions that were all done on the, you know, I'm still learning my way around the Microsoft stuff, but, and so I know it was posted, and I brought a copy of it was posted, so I don't know what happened, I don't know what the process was. You know, my concern being, input was solicited, but not reflected, so I'm not sure.
Yep, so I.
No, I'm glad you said that, because so how the changes were put in and incorporated, I had to use different documents to put it in, and I went through and tried making sure to the best of my abilities with the 3 documents that everything was reflective, and so I totally could have missed things, which is why it's in front of you. So I'm glad that you looked at it and found things if they're not reflected.
Yeah, this is a little strange because they both say printed 8/17. They both have the same printed date and revision 2, so something's wrong. I didn't go back and check, I only checked to make sure Vika had changed the posting.
Well, I know I have put in a bunch of changes, and you made some edits as well, subsequent to mine, which is what this is.
Right.
And then I never looked at it again until.
Yeah, and so my recommendation is we just table this to the next meeting.
Will you share with me what you have so I can double check to make sure that the document that I was looking at was in fact the document that?
Yeah, I'll just give it to you because it's.
It's not.
No,
I think
thank you for looking at it and thank you for,
This one, I think, Vika, is close to the original.
Very close.
Yeah, so I think that's the problem, and I honestly didn't catch that.
and I mean, I very well likely could have put the Ron edited document in it, so thank you for looking at it.
But in spending time looking at it, I would like to add 2 things, but I don't recall if they were
Go ahead.
comments before. I would like to see that notices to the public include some more social media, because I think when we're looking at the town website and the flyers that go up, if we could, there's been no use of the town of Sheboygan Facebook page, and I know that sometimes is a hot issue, but I would like to see that information is also posted. If it's posted as a flyer in the locations in the town, I'd like to see it posted electronically on that Facebook page.
And I think, Eliza Jane, if you want to make suggestions on, you need to sort of provide some specific language that you would want to add to the, and where it would go in the communication policy. So I think since we're back to the revision stage, I would suggest you provide that to Vika, but why don't you tell us what your other one is and.
Okay. Yep. And when it comes to number 4, the policy, the second one down, I really like our code of ethics and conduct policy that we approved on January 15 of 2025, and I would like to see that referred to here. So to communicate respectfully with the public, employees, and other members of the board, consistent with the code of ethics and conduct policy.
Can you put your recommendations right in the document? Because you all have access to it. So if you could add things, relative to the Facebook thing, I will say I am highly against adding any additional use of technology or forms of communication. I think there should be more of a policy in terms of what the communications that the municipality uses it, who runs them, who operates them, because we don't have a clear plan, like with the Zoom, which meetings, who operates them, who runs them, things like that. And so with Facebook, I have access to the Facebook account. I've attempted 1,000,000 times to reset the password. It is not possible because I didn't create the original one. So if we're gonna do that, we're gonna start fresh with a whole new fresh Facebook account, because that's the only way we would do it. And who would do it? It would be a conversation, but the simple suggestion creates a lot more behind the scene work, and not having those who's gonna do it, how it's gonna be done, and what the expectation of what's posted. Because we've had people reach out to us, community members, can you send this text alert to the text message from the town? Nope. So, do you follow?
Yes, I
Okay, thank you. Just keep that in mind.
appreciate that.
I will say that when I read this over, and I think I was confused originally, so this seems to be a communication policy for the select board, period.
Yes.
And I don't know if it would make more sense, even though we might be backtracking a little bit, to develop a communication policy in general.
Municipal community, yeah.
Would you prefer that?
So one question that is always raised, and we actually had this raised this week, is code enforcement officer wanted to remotely attend a planning board hearing. Planning board don't have any way of having ever run their meetings remotely, so they didn't know how that would happen or if it was even possible. And the only thing we have to refer to is the select board remote participation policy. And so I think it's a good point that with a lot of policies that are created, they're directed to the select board and maybe the town staff, and it often misses the full umbrella of the municipality.
Maybe just, we could work our ways towards a comprehensive communication policy, but you're gonna have sections. I mean, the select board have unique features in terms of how we communicate. So maybe we just, hold it in our minds that we're gonna ultimately have this global policy that'll cover everybody that works for the town or represents the town. But we do it section by section and then eventually assemble it. Just a thought. But
Or maybe, I mean,
a
a subsection in this to
Right.
kind of allude to more global expectation, yeah.
So I would be happy to, I think this is, circa 2013 initially, or who knows when we started, and it seems like, particularly, this was before COVID, before remote meetings, and so I agree, but when I read this over, I think we can approve this specifically to the select board, but I do think we need to develop another communication statement that's more global. It gives the staff direction, but also gives the committees direction, because, and the committee I work with, the CCAT has been, at times guilty of this, of not posting an agenda or not posting the meeting. I think we need to make it clear to all the committees that they need to post their meetings and what's the time frame they need to give the town to post it. It should be, at least 3 days ahead of time, those kind of things. So I think let's go back through the next version of this, and I appreciate you noticing that we had the wrong version here, but then I think we should structure this year also develop a communication policy that hits those things in the remote meeting thing for the community in general, because I think it's a lot that we have to deal with, and we don't really have a good protocol. And even things like, how people communicate. I mean, even use of the text messaging thing, which I think has been great, it should be clear that it's limited to town business.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've left it with a couple of nonprofits that I have asked them. I said, I apologize, unfortunately, this is specific to municipal government-related text alert, and that it just, because once we open up that can, it'll be really difficult to contain, and once you give one person, you kind of are obligated to do it to everyone else.
And I would recommend, wait, if it was me, I think you could wait on the Facebook, the social media notification until we get to the more global policy, because I think I wouldn't want to just adopt that for just the select board. It seems like that's a town thing.
Completely agree.
Okay, so, all right. so we will just take this up next week, thanks for noticing that, and I'm glad somebody, I've read it, because I think I sent out a message to read everything, so. Anyway, everybody okay waiting till we get a revised version? All right. The last thing on the regular agenda is 2568, to review and approve the SWCA scope of work and contract for the development of the wildfire protection plan for Shabik and Long Island. So this is a grant we received from, or we've been awarded from the Community Resilience Partnership. We haven't actually received the funding yet. And Shabik is doing a joint project with the town of Long Island, but Shabik is the recipient of the grant, and we will manage the grant on behalf of both towns. The plan will actually be for both towns. And so, because this is NOAA funding, because we've jumped through a couple more hoops on the state side they've had to kind of rejigger things because it's NOAA funding, I did suggest that our town attorney review the contract. And he just sent that to us today.
5 o'clock.
And we literally got it like right before the meeting. So he had some comments on the actual contract. He didn't have any comments on the scope of work. And I guess I need to hear from the board. I mean, I think Ben's comments are pretty legally oriented. I think Vic and I could follow up with SWCA and Ben and get those resolved. And we could potentially approve the contract and scope of work, but if people want to wait for the same reason, we can. It's really up to you. So what you do not have are Ben's comments that he provided to modify the language slightly on the contractual part of the agreement, as many attorneys do. I was kind of afraid that might happen, but I don't think it's anything substantive. My big concern was if the money disappears from this somehow, I want to be sure we're not exposed as a town. I think Ben went beyond that a bit, and there's one clause that he put in there to cover that situation, which I would agree with, and we could keep the rest of the language or not, depends on the SWCA's approach to that. But they are a big company, and I don't know how flexible they are, but
What do you mean, who's the big company?
SWCA. So it's really the reason, and I don't know, again, what the policy is, say, on having contracts reviewed, but I felt this one was unique with the funding stream, and I just wanted to be sure we were covered, and I didn't see anything in Ben's comments that concerned me.
Kind of, is it fair to assume you're concerned about the reliability of the funding stream in the current environment? And that if we're in contract, that we have an obligation that then the funding dries up for predictable reasons, that we're not exposed.
Correct, and the way the contract is, or the payment structure, originally we used to get a lump sum, the whole thing at once. So, and this is apparently the state is now doing it differently for these particular contracts where they're gonna prepay quarterly. So it's not even post-pay, it's prepay, so we have to estimate the quarterly need, and they will send us a check for that amount of money. So I don't think we have too much risk, is what I'm saying, because we can overestimate that a little bit. And so I don't think we would be particularly exposed. And my guess is we're gonna portion it out, sort of, it's $80,000, 4 quarters is the approximate term. I mean, we have 2 years to do the project, but it's probably gonna take 12 months. So we'll probably go 2021, and I think that will work.
And that would be phase 1, 2, and then phase, okay. Nice work.
So I'm just really asking if, first of all, people had any concerns about what they got in their packet as a contract, and then how comfortable people are leaving it to Vic and I to resolve some of these other comments that Ben has made.
Well, I'm very comfortable with dealing with Ben and the legal issues and stuff like that. I guess when I initially was reading it and you know, I've told the story off of having worked in emergency services and spent all this money and come up with this great plan. and then it sits on a shelf and nothing really happens. And it seemed, when I was first reading through it, before I got sort of to the point, I was feeling that way, like, we already know what the problem, we know where a lot of the problem areas are, we know we need to get all this deadfall out of the way and things like that. But it seems really the whole value, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really the whole value of this is essentially to have a well-documented, environmental consultant approved and drafted program to go after grants to actually deal with the problems that we know we already have and know. Essentially, that's the whole reason why to do this.
That's maybe the primary reason. So we need a wildfire protection plan in order to qualify for, it's actually FEMA money for wildfire disaster grants. But I will say the caliber of the consultant, we had one, we actually have one circa 2011. So this is really an update to our plan. Long Island has no plan, but we're updating our plan. But this, I think the caliber of this particular consultant has a lot of experience on the western US and just did a pretty significant wildfire plan in the North Shore of Massachusetts. I think they have a skill set that's a little more advanced than what we could access here, so I think it will be a better plan and a more comprehensive assessment than what we got right now. The other part of it is there's a community education piece, and so I do think that was also, the side benefit of it. And I myself feel, just having, interacted with the Maine Forest Service, even in this whole effort to write the scope of work, I know a lot more than I did. So I had a total misconception on what the fire risk was, probably from California. You're probably pretty well informed. But I do think the benefit to the community and even fire and rescue because it will involve both towns' fire departments. We will probably even consider collaborating even more. And maybe we submit it after the wildfire together. So I think it sort of strengthens the bonds between Long and Shabbat. So all of those I think are benefits. And it doesn't cost us anything, and we did want to hire a contractor so that it isn't a great burden on us. So, and given this summer, I'm glad we did it.
And given the positive response to the program that happened recently and how welcomed I thought that and receptive the community was, I think this is just wonderful. And I'm going to point out that since the Maine Forest Service said no more burn permits, no more campfires, we had 2 happen here on Shabbat, 2 in 2 nights in almost the same location. People said, oh, I thought I could just do a smaller fire. So I think that we really have made some good inroads, but the need is clearly there to be educating and engaging the public. So,
and to Ralph's, or maybe Doug's point, and this is the Maine Forest Service said this to us directly, the outer islands are also our responsibility, and that is commonly where they have a problem. So they did have a fire on, what was it, Sheep Island, I think in the Booth Bay area, and it was an island with 4 dwellings, pretty big island, 4 dwellings, and everybody had to respond, and that would also probably be our responsibility if it was in the waters that should be, or Long Island. So I think that's the other part, is that that's a likely scenario that someone's gonna start a fire on an outer island, and how do we deal with that? So these guys are kind of interested to deal with the island aspect, so anyway, I hope it isn't, we're trying to contract this out so it isn't a lot of work for us. We did cut out the whole GIS part because it's very, nice to have but not need to have, and felt like this was sufficient. So one thing that can happen with the resources they have is we can do more property-specific assessments. They've already done about 12, and we can do more of those with the resources, and so individual property owners might benefit from specific recommendations. So I guess I need, understanding the situation that you're not looking at what may be the final contract, but very close to that. Does anybody want to make a motion?
What does the motion need to say?
It would be to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract for the development of the wildfire protection plan for Shabbat Law contingent on resolution of our town attorney comments.
Okay, my pen just died.
How's that, does that, I can't make a motion, or I shouldn't, so I,
Just repeat that back again, and we'll make that I'll make that motion unless you want to, anybody else.
or default.
I'll make the motion.
I tried to write it down.
For
but
the
pen
town should
died.
be to enter into contract with SWCA for the development of wildfire protection plan for Motion Beach and Long Island, contingent upon the review and the final approval of the town attorney of the contract language.
You good with that? Anybody second that motion? David Hill second the motion. Okay, now, discussion? Any discussion?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Good plan.
Good point. Jackie, any comments, discussion? All right.
Carol, thank you, we're all
Thank you, Carol.
better.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, next, I was trying to, it's not that bad, it's only 2 hours, but still, it feels like we've been here for 6. Other business, anybody have anything, Vika, do you have anything for other business, that's what we're taking?
I have one thing I'd like to mention, it was especially brought up in GP Cogs, the parking survey, and as I understand it, the resident parking is gonna go back into it, or has gone back into
Yep.
effect.
Yep.
And all the comments we heard from people this summer, as well as what they summarized in here, is saying that non-year-round resident people were hurt by this type of distinction. And do we want to address that at all and rescind that, or is this, or what do we do about that? I think it was a valid concern by summer people on that point.
So I think the thing we would do would be to revisit the parking policy and decide if we want to make changes. I will say that in my experience with some of the summer residences, there was a lot of confusion about what the policy actually was. And so if you remember, we kind of lifted the restrictions for the summer months, and whether that's Memorial Day to Labor Day, or it's, May 1st to October 15th is maybe a question, but, and I think, but if we want to make changes, then it would be to bring the parking ordinance back and have some specific recommendations for changes, and then the board would go through those.
I'm just bringing it up as a topic. I think it's actually a moot point once Labor Day is gone. There aren't that many summer people there.
That was initially when those complaints came in, that's why the statement went into the ordinance to have that be in place Labor Day to Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So it eliminated that during the summer months, recognizing that that's when majority of those residents were there, but still providing that service of, I believe it's 12 parking spaces that are actually impacted to primarily the commuters, giving them a little bit ease and hopefully a little bit more ease of mind trying to catch a boat. So the current ordinance, as it's stated, did take those comments into consideration and make those adjustments.
Yeah, pretty quickly. So I think though, the process would be, if anybody, I think Geek is gonna add some things to Jamie's memo. I do remember, I think communication about the parking is what I heard is a pretty big thing. And so, we can put it back on the agenda as an item to discuss, if people want, or if you have specific changes you'd like to make to the ordinance, then, you can ask to put that on the agenda with your specific suggestions, and we can take it up.
And I do have some specific recommendation based on some of the issues that we've been dealing with some commercial contractors. So there's tweaking of language that I will be making a recommendation in future discussions for future agendas. So that could be an opportunity if you do have specific language that you're interested in seeing in there.
I will say that I have heard from more than one person that they think that the staging, parking where the lobster trap area has been helpful and safer. And I would agree, so kudos to Vika who suggested that to begin with. Change is hard for us as a island community. So anything else on other business? Okay, next is.
Oh, no, I do.
Yeah.
So, we were gonna have the community conversation around the housing. I'm just coming back from COVID, 10 days out, and it knocked my socks off, so I'll be back in the saddle working on that probably later in the month.
Okay.
The second thing I wanna say is Ben Pagula it alluded to it with John Wren. He's continuing to work on the circuit breaker. I just wanted to give a nod to the fact that nice progress is being made. He's being very thorough and has enjoyed working with the finance committee on that. But there still are several steps away from bringing it to this board. So thank you.
Any other business? So next, we're gonna move on to communications, and I think Vika, maybe we'll start with you on communications.
So I have one that I would like to share, and it's an email that I received from a gentleman named Winslow Robinson, who happens to be a good friend of John Emery, and he was reaching out to share with the town and to see if the town's interested in engaging in a further conversation. It looks like he's in the starting stages of a business that is to remove invasive plants that harbor ticks, specifically using a non-chemical approach, which is a robotic dog, which physically goes through and somehow removes the invasive plants. And so
Take out bittersweet?
so he gave me some basic pricing, it's $400 per acre or $1 per tick. So I told him that I would get back to the board to see if there's an interest from the board to have a further discussion, to see if you'd be interested in me having a further discussion with him, to refer it to, I think what is at this point pretty non-existent TIG committee that we have, which I think maybe a couple people on that committee would be interested, but either way, I told him I would bring this to you to see what the interest was from the board, if it was.
Any thoughts? I kind of think referring it to the TIC committee, I mean, they're not particularly active, but they are knowledgeable, and I think maybe they are a committee.
Given the sheer volume of acreage impacted by bittersweet and the fact that these ticks are everywhere, this could escalate quite quickly, but I can see maybe private property owners would be interested, and that would be nice to support. But I think if we were looking at doing it on town-owned land, it just seems like an overwhelming task with a big expense when we're looking at trees that need to come down. So I'm intrigued by the idea.
Yeah, and I think nothing to prevent him from promoting it sort of privately.
Nice.
Apart from, the tick dog, I can't remember right now with whom I had the conversation, but it was someone who had recently been diagnosed with babesiosis and was quite sick. I just can't remember who it was. I think, I don't know, I'd like to see a little more emphasis, perhaps, you know, education-wise
Education.
from the town.
On,
Tick-borne diseases. I mean, I know that one can access all of that on the internet. Of course, summer is, you know, I mean,
But we,
all of us know about it, but
we are seeing an uptick, pun intended, in anaplasmosis on Shawinigan as well. So,
okay, so thanks for that comment, Jackie. I think it's, yeah, it's, you know, maybe we can talk to the tick committee. I think we have a tick committee and maybe we can speak with them about how to improve the education piece. If they want to dissolve as a committee and then the town wants to reassign that, but I feel like that's their purview. So we can bring it up with them and see where it goes from there. I think it's something Ellie would be happy to do, you know, so I think it's a good suggestion. And kind of letting people know what's going on locally is certainly valuable, and, you know, what the symptoms would be from, you know, anaplasmosis, so they're aware, and their doctors are aware, so I think that's a good idea.
and we can get good data from the tick lab if people are submitting ticks for testing.
Okay, anything else under communication? Richard?
I'd just like to mention a phone call I received from a neighbor on Bennett's Cove who complained.
not me.
Not you.
Just want to say that, you know, there are others.
Who complained rather upsettingly that previous Sunday, there were 2 barges that landed at Bennett's Cove, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I'm very upset that, and I guess just having 2 in a day and on the weekend, and I just wanted to, like I said, I would try to bring up what can we do or what can we do to limit barging at Bennett's Cove. This is, in my mind, it's Yarmouth does it to us, so why can't we do it at Bennett's Cove? I mean, they limit how many times we can barge, so why can't we do that?
Was that
To a
normal
reasonable
on Sunday?
basis.
Pardon?
It was on.
Is Sunday a normal day for barging?
No, not historically. It has, weekend landings have happened occasionally. This was well, I wasn't home because it was Sunday evening, shebang. But, so I didn't witness it myself, but I've seen photos of this after dark landing. And that has happened in the past, occasionally. Now, the weekend part also has happened.
Is this planned?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was my home.
So I think to address that, I mean, there's sort of 2 pieces to Bennett's Cove. One is looking at the infrastructure question, which we met about today. The other part is management, and I think Vika's made some strides in trying to improve the management, but there is a subcommittee for Bennett's Cove, which I think, I don't even know, Richard and.
Yeah.
And who
So-
else? But I would recommend that if you have some specific suggestions about managing Bennett's Cove traffic and barging, it would make sense to, you know, meet with the residents and bring those forward. Because those are separate from the infrastructure thing that, you know, we're working on, and that's, you know, so I certainly would encourage you to move forward on that.
So, David, you were on that at one point.
Do you know?
Somebody else got it.
David?
So David, to my knowledge, David and Richard were the 2 people that were tasked to communicate with the residents where that landed or how that took place. I was never part. Typically, when these subcommittees happen, I'm in attendance to those, most of those meetings.
So you may want to follow up with a meeting with the residents and sort of, you know.
Okay, so we'll come up with a strategy.
Well, I think it would be to start the conversation with the
Start the
residents about what they are concerned about and take it from there. It might take a bit to kind of come up with some suggestions.
Do we know what the relative breakdown is on plant barging between municipal and private?
Is Chip?
We do have that information, I don't have it off the top of my head, though.
Interesting to know.
So again,
I mean,
I
obviously,
think-
it's not gonna be municipal, it couldn't have been municipal barging on a Sunday. To me, it just seems like that shouldn't even be happening.
As I say, I wasn't
That's
at
the point.
home to, so although the person who called, Richard, seemed to know what sorts of, it wasn't municipal, and seemed to know what sorts of vehicles.
Yeah, the point is too, is that it's not just the residents too, especially being on a Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend, is that there's potential beachgoers and, weekend people.
Right, but I think since you had a complaint from a resident and you had a subcommittee to communicate with residents, it would be good, I don't know when the last time you met with them, but it's probably would be good to do that again.
Okay.
I agree, it's bigger than just the residents, but that's kind of how we structured it for now.
Right.
Bring something in writing as a recommendation from the subcommittee to the entire board, so then that way the board can have a discussion and determine what the next steps would be.
And then, I think on the same topic, Jackie, we had an email from you today, which I barely got to read, but I think and if you wanna, did everybody see Jackie's email? It came right this afternoon, I think.
I saw it.
Okay,
I wasn't CC'd on it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
okay, so Jackie,
I did leave a message at the town office, I don't remember what I said, because I was rather upset. So this morning I saw a large load of lumber, come off the barge on a very long trailer, thing. And so I expected that truck was, gonna come back empty, and it did arrive down at the shore around 11:30. So partly as a follow-up to this morning's meeting, I went down to look at the beach, but at 11:30, and noted that the truck was idling. So I asked the driver when he expected the barge to return. He said 5:30, that he'd been told the barge would return at 5:30.
5:30,
That was when the tide served.
and it's 11:30 in the morning.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just clarify, okay?
How did he get in?
well, let's let Jackie finish and then we can,
So I also said to the driver, I assume the reason you're idling is so that you can have your AC on. And he confirmed that. I did mention, that there's no idling on the road. He, of course, wasn't aware of that, because there's no sign down there. I suggest
They keep
moving.
getting taken down every time we put them up, so.
Well, I was involved in a surgical procedure at the beginning of July when the no idling sign may have been placed down at the cove. Nobody in the neighborhood saw a sign, maybe it was taken down so quickly.
It was taken down within less than 24 hours, and we've put it up twice.
so anyway, Jackie, so you spoke with the guy, and so the upshot of your.
There's a little more to the story.
Okay.
And that was that I was, I kind of wondered how long he would idle. And I was away for the early part of the afternoon, and at 4:30 I returned home, drove down to the shore. He was idling at that time. Whether he idled all afternoon, I do not know. But I would suggest that the no idling sign that's up at the top of the road be moved to the bottom. You know, just as a trial run. Because, you know, I'm sure many of the truck drivers, like this one, wasn't aware. Of course, I don't know whether he would have adhered to the no idling, but anyway. Since largely the trucks are not staging at the other side of the intersection, although when I came up here tonight, there were 2 large trucks that I think had just come off the barge, were parked up at the, you know, other side of the intersection. Probably they're gonna be there all night. I expect they'll still be there when they go home. You know, don't know about that. But, you know, it'd be easy enough to put that no idling sign, tack it onto the 2 signs that are already there.
Thank you for your suggestion. I think we do have a chronic problem with people stealing signs, and it does get,
I know.
frustrating trying to.
Are there any trees or elevated, you know, trees or telephone poles or anything down there that you could attach a camera to?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
And I got cameras, I can give you a couple cameras to put up.
some game cameras.
I mean, I'd have to double check, we may or may not have one at the corner because that stop sign keeps getting down.
Right.
I'd have to confirm, but I've directed Public Works to put up a couple of cameras in other places because of this happening, because that's the only way we've been able to get some of this behavior to stop. Some behavior has slowed down, I think, as a result that a lot of these individuals have got off to college. So I suspect that maybe we'll be limited on some of this behavior as a result of that in the coming months, so.
Do we have a town policy on damaging or theft of town property?
It's been a legal opinion that's been asked, and it's, you know, you could make a policy, but you can also charge them with theft and trespassing private property, things like that. So there's a variety of different things, it's
I'm
just.
wondering if we have one in place and with a fine structure, I mean, like the booth.
No, there isn't.
It would only take 1 or 2 people being caught on camera and then being fined fairly significantly to put an end to it.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a significant fine to have an effect.
Yeah.
Because it's a culture. It's a culture out here. It's got to do with people's identity as an island culture, I think, and so, but at any rate.
Bennett's Cove is a persistent,
Right.
that whole, from those stop signs to any sign we put down there, with an exception of a couple, they just seems like a targeted place where they tend to take them very, very quickly.
So we'll take that under advisement. I think we may wanna try to replace the sign again. I think also, the coming down there, the idling thing is a problem. We've been trying to work with the barge operator to, make sure he tells folks that are getting on the barge what the rules are. I mean, I think maybe we need, I think we maybe need to do more. And, our parking enforcement, we've improved things this year, I think, compared to this time last year, so it's an incremental improvement, but certainly could be more. But I would suggest that could be part of the discussion with the resident community down there, is sort of, coming back with some specific recommendations. So, and if it's, put cameras up so the signs can't be stolen, we can go with that. I don't know.
I mean, given the, as you have pointed out, Vika, the number of times the stop sign at the Chandler's intersection, the number of times that has been removed, I agree it's time for a camera.
Yeah, I mean, Schoolhouse Road, right by the historical site, those stop signs disappeared, you know, very quickly.
And those are, but those two that you just mentioned are both some that matter quite a bit, if
Yeah.
someone doesn't know their
Well,
way around, so.
we did inventory and there was $900 worth of signs that got taken 1 week. So it's, and there is not a big budget for signs. And a few years, I think my first year as the town administrator, that budget line got eliminated entirely. And then a little bit got put into it. So it's been an ongoing issue for many years that seems like it's been a struggle to figure out how to fix.
But I do think sort of maybe a management plan for Bennett's Cove barging might help. And so maybe we could head in that direction.
Another neighbor, told me that when the barge landed Sunday evening, and there may have been 2 landings, I'm not sure. I think there were, I saw 2 pictures.
7 AM and 7 PM.
That the lights on the barge are blinding.
Yeah.
And there are 4 like spotlights which shone into that neighbor's home.
And so I think that's just, I think having a meeting and getting moving on some of those concerns would make sense. Because it really, we can't do anything here at the select board meeting with that. So I think you really need to come forward with some suggestions, and I would encourage you to do that. Because it looks like we'll, you know, we're not gonna have any permanent solution between now and the spring from the sound of it. So, we're gonna continue to be operating the way we're operating, so in that context, maybe I think it's helped at the Stone Pier to be more proactive about some of these issues. Not everybody likes it, but I think it's been an improvement, and I think Bennett's could benefit from that same attention.
I'm only one person, obviously, but I think the neighbors would welcome, meeting with the committee.
I want to say, I agree, I think it's time for a policy conversation around landings at Bennett's Cove. And I was there twice today, and I was pleased to see some staging happening above the road, and also the parking attendant person was there as well. So it was, was pleased to see that in my 2 visits today.
And I think that's really, I think Beacon's made an attempt to really improve the management down there, but I think it probably needs a little more structure.
I would be curious whether the parking attendant might have addressed the island.
I don't know.
Might have what?
Addressed the idling.
Correct.
I don't think,
He's a parking.
he's a parking attendant.
But it's a parking ordinance that that idling is prohibited on the Bennett's Cove Road.
So I think that was good
Big
feedback,
conversation.
and I think it's, I think he's probably focused mostly on, physical vehicles and parking, but we can, it's true, it's an item ordinance, but maybe we need to decide how we're gonna handle that, because I don't think it's.
He's also not, I think we've been asking the sheriff to do some of the more heavier confrontational things, but having a parking attendant that has no authority outside of that ordinance and no law enforcement authority, I think puts us in a more difficult position, because he's just simply telling them to follow an ordinance. So
I think it needs sort of
Review.
Right, and I think it needs an elevated plan or policies, and then we have to figure out how we're gonna implement that, because it's not just the plan, it's how we do it, and anyway, so we'll have to take that up. So I think that, does anybody else have anything else on the communication side?
I just wanted to clarify our discussion earlier, which is a communication issue, so the hook parking, I brought up in the meeting about the clearance from the driveway to provide visibility for people exiting the driveway. Did you want me to follow up with code enforcement officer? I wasn't clear, like ask him if he was aware of,
Well, I just thought he might be able to answer the question. What I would suggest that maybe you follow up with GEI and just remind them of that comment, and then you could copy the code enforcement officer on that. Does that seem reasonable? In other words, because I think that's a legitimate concern that would be better for, and just remind GEI that you may, that's a concern by the property owner, and then you could copy the code enforcement officer so he's in the loop.
okay.
That clearance issue is also relevant to the Bennett's Cove Road.
I think, because I've taken a quick look on it, there are certainly standards, whether they're, codes.
Right,
I
and
don't
that's
know.
where I think the code enforcement officer might know the answer to that. There's also sort of standards that the traffic engineer is probably aware of. So there's sort of two different things. I doubt that there's any actual requirements in our ordinances.
Well, not in ours,
Right.
but if it's a traffic one.
Yep. All right, so next, I think we can move on to number 7, which is to approve the minutes of August 6th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? No discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so items to be placed on a future agenda. Thank you for coming, Jackie.
Oh, you're welcome, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Anything that comes to mind to be placed on a future agenda? And I think we just, I think Bennett's Cove in terms of parking and traffic management and barging management seems like it's one, so I'm gonna put that on there.
We'll be revisiting communication.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the communication policy.
I'll put that on the next meeting. There was a communication from Mike Morse, a request to have the select board discuss a proposal relative to municipal right-of-way to shore down at Waldo Point. And so that's something that'll be coming to you at the next select board meeting.
So that went to you, but not to the rest, I mean,
Yeah.
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 But we want to wait, the Island Fellow, that's one of their 3 responsibilities, so we want to make sure.
I don't-
we're doing it.
This wouldn't fall under her responsibility. This is a select board discussion and decision.
One thing that, is there any plan with the Island Fellow to introduce her to the board or what's the introducing her to the community plan?
Well, there isn't one yet.
Okay.
She, I did speak with Ken Hamilton about it, so I think it would be nice to have an event where she is welcomed in the community, not just at the
Right.
select board, so, I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I think in the past, with Island Fellows, we have, and we did sort of do it with Ellie, she had both a, introduction, it might have not been right away, to the board itself, and then also a separate kind of relaxed community event. So I would recommend that, particularly since she's working on several town-related projects, that you invite her, we can invite her to come to attend a board meeting so she understands how they work, and then also, introduce them. And it's not urgent, I just think it's the right way.
Well, I think the next board meeting would be the
Okay.
Yeah.
perfect time to have her be introduced, and, I'd like to see something happen perhaps in the Ross Room, but I don't know if people would come if we had an event, a meet and greet in the Ross Room, where else would we do it?
Right here.
right here?
You mean a community event?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think here is fine.
Yeah. I would do it here. It would be very distracting to do something like that in the Ross room, I
Well, there's
think.
Ellie, and there is, who's already here. Oh, and
The new people, they're two.
well, she's married, so we include her husband, but
That's-
that would really be about Lorraine.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
And when you introduce her to the board, it'd be helpful to have just a little description of the project she'll be working. And I don't know if that's you, Vika, but, you know, who she's working on, who's supervising her, you know, how long she's here, you know, whatever the board might need to do if there's anything, and, you know, just so she knows who we are and what we do. And then I also think it's kind of, I have to say, the fellow that was on Long Island was flabbergasted when they attended their first board meeting. In that, that's how it works.
Good or bad? Good or bad?
Kind of like, wow, I had no idea, I just thought people made these decisions in the town office.
I think she's much better informed than that. And so the meeting starts at 6. I'll have, we can have her come early, just if anybody wants to show up early. But so maybe a half hour.
I think we should have it as part of the.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. And
We can talk about that
Yeah, we
later.
can talk
Can
about
we
it.
go home, please?
Yeah, I think we're good.
let's do it. The job performance is already laid out because this is the first quarter
Yeah, but the board doesn't know
Yeah.
what they're doing, so I'm asking that you introduce the work to the
Yeah.
board. So we can get
We
out of
can-
here and let Vika go home. I think our high priority item is also to come up with a date that we can all make. And maybe it's, you know, and I'm assuming we can't do anything in September. Is that true? Like she's not probably available in September for
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Christina had very limited availabilities for a full day retreat with us.
Oh, you're talking about Christmas
Yes.
Day.
Yeah. Because I do think the sooner the better we have this retreat,
Oh, back to the retreat.
but I want us all to be there, that's most important. And just everybody has challenges.
So how do you want us to submit availability?
Well, I think we could do a doodle poll where people say they
Yeah.
have these dates available, and maybe, I was thinking Fridays, but I think we should open it up to Monday through Friday, because honestly, you know. we
She
need
had
several
availabilities on Fridays.
here.
That's where she had a lot of flexibility. That's what kind of led the focus on Fridays.
Does she have any Fridays in September available?
Um,
Why don't we I'll put it, one of us will put together a doodle poll and include September, and in the event that she's available, we might look at that. So how does that sound? I mean, I think that's, because it generally doesn't get better with time. So we'll just throw it out there, but we'll try to find a date, and I think it sounds like Friday is her preferred date, so we might try to focus especially on that.
And just to throw a monkey wrench in, I'm gone October 9 to 22.
Yeah, okay.
Going on the cruise.
We'll do a doodle poll, and I think that will give us a good sense of what people's availability is. One thing I do wanna, I think at some point we need to get a tech person. Chip is doing a lot, Vika does this, and I think we need to really try to get somebody, there's one. That's what we can, all right, so I'd like to, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn our meeting?
Second by Richard, all in favor? I'm sorry to keep you.
Vika,